everybody. Donna Schwartz here from the Everything Saxophone podcast. And I am so proud, I'm so honored to have Michael Wilbur here. Michael is an incredible saxophone player, incredible songwriter, just an incredible musician. And I am really excited because we have so many awesome things to talk about. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you so much, Donna.
Now, I'm going to do something totally different, people. I'm going to be starting off with a quote. And this quote comes from the Moon Hooch website. And this is from Michael. He said, "I'm realizing more and more every day that you could make anything happen for yourself if you really want to. You could change your existence by just going out and doing it, by taking simple actions every day. The band Moon Hooch is the poster child for turning the power of positive thoughts and intentions into reality." What a perfect way to start off for January 2023. Especially, New Year, we're always thinking about let's change some habits or whatever. I think this is a great, great quote. Can you expand upon this?
Absolutely. I mean, it's really quite simple. Anytime you wish to achieve anything, you have to just act. You have to just do it. The famous Nike quote. It's simple but true. And I realized more and more as I've gotten older and moved through my career that it's not about thinking about doing it. It's not things don't happen in thought. Things happen in action. And whether that be whether your goals are to become a better saxophone player or a healthier person, you really just have to take that first step. And it's that simple. If your goal this year is to get in better shape, go start by going for a walk. It doesn't have to be a marathon. It doesn't have to be this monumental thing. You don't have to be able to shred on giant steps if you're just starting to play the saxophone. The practicing for a half hour or an hour, your major scales is great. That's a step that will get you to that bigger goal. But it's the little steps, it's the daily commitments and sticking to your own word. To me, that's really what discipline is. It's staying true to what you say you're going to do, not what you say to other people you're going to do. That comes with it, I think. But starting with, I said I'm going to practice today. I'm going to practice today. I said I'm going to go on a walk today. I'm going to go on a walk today. And doing that every day. And eventually the resistance gets less and less, and it just becomes natural to do what you should be doing.
How did you come upon that for yourself?
It's a good question. I had a lot of really great teachers in my life, saxophonists and mentors in general. And they all had one singular message, and that was practice. And what that instilled in me was don't practice sometimes, don't practice here and there, but practice every day. And they would tell me, it doesn't have to be long, but pick up the horn every day. Make sure that you're playing it every day. If you want to be a saxophonist, it has to become part of your life.
Who were some of those mentors? Who are the ones that inspired you, I guess, the most?
Well, from a very young age, there was this local saxophonist named Angelo Morlani. He was my first sax teacher in Brockton, Massachusetts. And he was a really sweet guy, but he instilled discipline in a non-authoritarian way. From a very young age, he showed us, us being my band, and because I was in band from fourth grade, showed us that the only way to learn this music and the only way to really prove is to play every day and have fun with it.
When you say like non-traditional, like what do you mean? Can you remember?
Well, I remember one day going into the band room and he was in the corner. He was just improvising, just riffing, and I thought, wow, that's really cool. He's just making stuff up. But he was taking the time to do that, and that stuck with me. Like, that's practice. Like, just making music, just playing the saxophone is practice. And, uh, you know, still to this day, some days I don't feel like practicing patterns or the more maintenance kind of stuff, but I'll play. I'll pick the horn up and play. If it's a really tight day, I'll make sure I get 20 minutes in at least of just improvising, connecting with music, connecting with the horn, connecting with myself. And yeah, it was very helpful.
That's cool. You know what's really awesome too? Your, I'm going to make an assumption that that was probably your first, let me think, your first encounter with music, or am I wrong? Did you do any kind of piano or anything before then, or was that the first time?
That was the first time.
That's cool. Yeah, like myself, we were lucky enough. Not everybody has this too. We were lucky enough to have lessons in fourth grade in school, you know, and not just, you know, band, just go to band, but actually we pulled out a class and you get lessons every week, you know, group lessons and that kind of thing. So that's cool that you had that as well.
Mm,
Who
yeah.
was your mentor? So that inspired you. So then, you know, did you start on alto or tenor?
I started on alto.
Okay, start in alto, and then you know you're going through school. Who were your other mentors? Did you start studying with any private teachers or anything like that at that point?
Yeah, well, I started studying with Angelo Morlani and
Oh, cool.
the Louis Villani. Funny coincidence. He was my second sax teacher, and he taught me more improvisation. He kind of started getting me into jazz and taught me the blues scale and that kind of stuff.
Cool. The Italians.
Yeah. So it's funny. There's a lot of Italian sax players in this area.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So, okay, so that was that's starting to get into the next thing I was going to talk about. When did you get started in improvisation? And so Lewis started you out in that, like what, in sixth, seventh grade or something like that?
Yeah, sixth, seventh grade. Just yeah, spot on.
Cool. Awesome. And you're probably using the Jamie Aebersold stuff like everybody does.
Definitely.
Cool. Awesome. So, studying with these teachers, you're getting inspired. Who were your mentors in terms of, you know, not teachers per se, but like who were you listening to in terms of, you know, whether it was jazz, whether it was other styles of music that really inspired you?
John Coltrane and Sonny Rollins
Yeah.
were from day one big inspirations. The first jazz CD I ever had was John Coltrane, Mr. PC, which I think is a bootleg that somebody made. It's not like on a label, I don't think. No. It's called Man Made Miles. Sorry. Man Made Miles, the name of the album. And it sounds like bootleg recording. When I've gone back and listened to it, it sounds like somebody in the audience like brought a recorder. And it's super out. It's like, it's Dolphy and Coltrane, and they're just going in on Mr. PC. And I remember the first time I heard it, I was like, "What is this? This is nonsense." You know, it didn't sound like music to me. My fourth grade ears. So I think I actually got into, and then I got a Sonny Rollins CD, which I immediately loved. I was like, "All right, this is," you know, I've heard I've heard people draw comparisons. Coltrane is like a bus that doesn't stop; it just keeps going. And Sonny Rollins is like the bus that like makes every stop and like lets everybody on. And it's like, and I think that's pretty accurate. Coltrane, it took me maturing a little bit to really start to appreciate John Coltrane.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, but you know what's interesting though? In listening to some of the YouTube videos and stuff like that, I definitely hear some Coltrane influence. There's no question. There's no question about that.
Yeah, I mean, once I started maturing, like I said, he became my main influence, and like I worshipped Coltrane for so long, you know, like
Yeah,
yeah.
no, for sure. And you sound so good too. And I want to get into I want to go down the timeline too, but I also want to get into, you know, like your sound. Your sound is huge. It's huge. And you mainly play tenor and bass sax, right? So that takes a ton of air. So the cool thing is that, you know, your when you were at your youngest ages, sounds like you had really good teachers. So they probably really instilled, breath support and all those types of things, I'm sure.
Absolutely. It's funny though, because my whole life I've struggled with chronic asthma. I've had really bad asthma my whole life. And I really believe that the saxophone saved me. Because the first few years of my life, I was in the hospital because of asthma, in and out. And I started playing saxophone, and it really helped improve my lungs. But it wasn't until I started getting into like fitness and cardiovascular training and like really seeing my body as a vehicle and like wanting to improve upon it constantly that my sound started getting bigger and more powerful. So I really attribute a lot of my sound and ability to project to my physicality.
And that's one of the things too that I saw that in the Moon Hooch bio and stuff like that. And I want to definitely dive into that in a little bit. But that I didn't know that about the asthma. I had interviewed Matt Lee for this podcast a number of episodes ago, and he was talking about how he has asthma. And he actually had to recently move from Las Vegas to Florida because it's so windy and all that kind of stuff, really bad for his asthma. But and also Chris Godber. So a bunch of people, suffering with asthma. I know personally, I used to teach very young kids in elementary school for over like 15 years and stuff. And I know as a brass player too, you should play an instrument because that will absolutely help. That will absolutely help your lungs. There's no question about it. But also adding that fitness element in there too. When did you start? Thinking about fitness? Was it during your teens, or was it, after you left high school or something?
It's interesting. I've had a few relationships with it in different forms. My first relationship with it was when I was 13, because I was an overweight kid, got picked on, and I was just like, screw this. I don't want to get made fun of anymore. So I started going to the gym, and I was also growing at that point. So I got taller, and I was going to the gym, got in shape, and that felt really good. And I was like that for most of high school. So yeah, about 13, I started lifting. But it wasn't until then I went to college and, partied and just fitness went out the window. Like what body, and, and, got wild for a little bit. And then this one day I was smoking a cigarette. I smoked cigarettes for a little while. Like
Wow.
I went like the opposite direction. And one day I was smoking a cigarette and it just dawned on me, like, there's a big difference between knowing something and what's the word I'm looking for? Like, basically, you can intellectually understand smoking is bad for you, right? But there's a moment where it clicks, and it's like, aha, I'm killing myself. Like,
yeah.
Know it actually, and then you don't want to do it anymore. So I had that moment, and then I immediately tried to go run a mile. And it was just a disaster. I couldn't run a quarter mile. I was like hacking a lung, and I have asthma, wheezing. It was bad. So that's when I started getting back into it. And basically I stuck with it for a little while, went back and forth. It's not a linear journey, it's like spirals. Like I got really into it for a while and then fell back off. Life events happened.
Yeah.
And so right now really I'm 33 years old now. And something clicked in 2018. I was inspired by this ex-Navy SEAL named David Goggins. I don't know if you've heard of him.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Yeah. I read his book, and
oh, cool.
Again, something clicked like never before. And it was that same kind of thing that like I learned about saxophone when I was young. Like for some reason, it was so long ago when the discipline with saxophone was instilled that it's hard to remember exactly how it happened.
Okay.
But the fitness thing, like I remember it well because it was 2018. I read this book and I realized like it's It's about doing it every day. There is no finish line, you know? Because I think like what happens with fitness and health is like, you think like, I'm going to get in shape for this, or I'm going to lose weight for this, or whatever. It's like, you see a finish line. Like, I'm just going to get there and then I'm done. I don't have to do this anymore. But his book kind of taught me the never finished mentality. Just like, you just keep doing it every single day until you die. And that's life. And it makes you better every day. So since then, I've a machine with exercising, like never before.
That's I'm so glad that you shared that. I actually wrote down there is no finish line. And yeah, I've heard of David Goggins. Do you listen to the Lewis Howes podcast, the Greatness School of Greatness?
I have. I don't listen to it. I should.
The only reason why I said that is because he was a guest on there, and I'm thinking maybe that's where you found out about him. But yeah, I love that podcast. There's so many podcasts I listen to that actually are not music related, because there is no finish line. You could easily adapt that to music. So many people in the beginning mistakenly believe, and you only know what you know. You don't know what you don't know. They mistakenly believe, oh, okay, well, once I make it, I don't really have to worry about anything. But the better and better you get, the more stuff you have to work on, or want to work on, not have to, want to work on. And the greatest players, I mean, you speak to them, you read their autobiographies, their biographies, and it's not like, they practice less, they practice more,
Yeah.
as they reached monumental status. I mean, look at someone like Sonny Rollins. Unfortunately, he can't play anymore, but my God, and Jimmy Heath, I mean, it's just crazy. Clark Terry, I mean, all these people, it's just crazy. And just the idea there's no finish line, just applying that to music too. And I'm wondering, when you read that book, you probably also made that association with music too, and that helped turn some things around.
Absolutely. When you start thinking of life in that way, the things you choose to do become non-negotiable. It's like that part of your mind that's like, I don't want to practice today, or I don't want to make music, or whatever. The resistance, you're like, well, we're going to, and you're going to feel great afterwards. Same with exercise. And I think in today's world, we're so focused on material success, like number of followers, number of likes, number of video views, how much money you make, how many people came to the show, this and that. It's like all about the external world. How much am I being validated by everyone else, rather than, am I giving it my all? Am I growing as a person, as an artist? I think our values today are really switched, and I definitely made that connection with the David Goggins and the music, and because if God forbid something happened and Moon Hooch ended, or whatever, if anything happened, I'm gonna keep making music no matter what. If I can't play saxophone anymore, even, I'm just gonna keep doing it. I'll find a way, because that's just what I do. I'm a musician, I'm an artist, and nothing's gonna change that.
I think that's so incredibly inspiring, and also motivating too, because what you just said, especially, okay, you're fairly young, 33 or whatever. There are people coming up now where they were born in the age of cell phones, and they don't know what it was like not to have a cell phone, to have to carry quarters around in case of an emergency to make a phone call. People haven't even seen a phone booth, because most cities don't have them anymore. But just the fact that you said, and I am not dating myself, people, I'm not that old, really, I just have to put that out there. But anyway, I do remember those days, and just having cell phones is awesome. But just when you said that, people are they need that external validation, how many likes, how many views, And it's all about that. And it's all about standing out. And it is important to be different, and it is important to be you, and not a question of being different for the sake of being different, so that you can get views or whatever. But was reading David Goggins' book also, did that also help change your thinking when it comes to this? Because you guys are insanely popular, and were you thinking like this before you became insanely popular, or did it just come to fruition like fairly recently?
We've, I would say all the members of the group, we have a new drummer now, but even him, like we're all in it for the music. We always have been. And I think that's what drew Wenzel and I ultimately together, was that we're serious about making music. And before Moon Hooch happened, I was practicing 8 to 10 hours a day. I was still in school, but I was a very serious practicer. And I had no doubt in my mind what my definite purpose was, what I saw as my life purpose, and that is to share music with the world. So obviously becoming popular and making it your career is a huge plus. And and there's also nothing wrong with having goals and wanting that. But that could end up being the finish line mentality. Once I get popular, once I, am filling rooms, then I'm done. And you see it happen with certain artists. Like, it's like, were they making it for the music because they wanted to, and it's from their heart and their soul, and they want to share that and heal people? Or was it just to, get known and get rich and, get out of there? Different approaches, but for me, it's always been about the journey, like every step of the way. This year I can play in a different way. And I love composition, because composition really keeps things fresh. Once you reach a certain level on the saxophone, there's always levels to go, but the more advanced you become, the curve is less exponential. I'd say the first 10 years is like whoop, and then after that, if you're really putting in time, it's more like, it's less about like how fast and high you can play, and more about how well can you express yourself, where can you go with it, and I think that's a beautiful thing with composition, because you can always create new sound worlds and discover new places that you hadn't previously done. And I think that's how, and analogously with exercise, you can set greater distances to run. You can set greater weights to lift. But again, it doesn't have to be so like goal based. It can just be like, go to the gym today, and that's huge, because you did it, and you did it yesterday and the day before, and just keeping the momentum going. That's the journey. It's when you stop doing it that you get off the path, or that's how it feels to me, at least.
And it gets harder to get back on.
Yes.
And it gets hard to get back on, because then, you feel like you've lost ground. A lot of times people will take a break for a while, and then, let's say, pick up the horn and expect to be able to play what they did a few months ago or whatever, and it doesn't pop right out. And especially for trumpet players too. I mean, because it's yeah, it's really tough. In fact, I had gone to an International Trumpet Guild conference, and the principal trumpet for the LA Phil said, "Oh yeah, I take off 8 weeks in the summer," and you heard the audience go, "Oh." We were like, we couldn't believe it, because yeah, exactly. I mean, the lead, the principal trumpet of the LA Phil takes like 8 weeks off. And we were like, how do you do that? How do you come back and become, achieve the master status that you have? And he does it. And some people, feel like they need the break. But yeah, do you ever feel that?
Absolutely. I think, and obviously this person is at a very high level of playing already. I do think that once you get to a certain point in your development as an instrumentalist or whatever it is, as an athlete, it's important to take breaks, intentional breaks. I think there's a big distinction to be made between like falling off and intentionally taking a break. You know, there's there's a lot happening in your life and you kind of forget to play for a while, and then you're just like, whatever, it's not so important to me anymore. That's a very different break than like, I'm going to take these 8 weeks off to heal my chops and like do other things with my life, and then after 8 weeks, I'm back on it because, that's what I do. So, there's a big difference. Like he trusts that once that 8 weeks is over, it's game time again. He knows how to get back on. But it really takes that's why when I talk to my students about this, like, to me, it's so important if you're in your first 10 years of playing sax to really try and play every day. If you're going on vacation, bring it with you. Play a few tunes. It doesn't have to be a lot, but like, if you want to get better and you want to achieve a really high level on your instrument, you have to push it. And then once you get there and you're a professional, of course, breaks are important. Yeah.
And the key word that you said is intentional breaks. I really like that. I think that's super, super important. So I want to backtrack a little bit. When did you get started? When did you start getting involved with composition?
When I was at the New School in New York City.
Got it.
I had a great composition teacher named Kirk Nurok. And I was actually composing like string quartets and 20th century classical type music. I was really, really into that. Like Morton Feldman and Stefan Wolf and the names are leaving me right now. But John Cage. I was really into John Cage and his compositions.
Wow.
And so I was writing that kind of stuff. And then Moon Hooch happened. And at first, Wenzel wrote the first, like, I think 7 tunes. And then I started kind of, writing for it because he was already producing house music. So he definitely brought that to the band, like the dancey, like simple melody elements. And I brought the more like out there, like energetic, atonal sometimes, free side of it. And I think that's really what made the band interesting, was him and I are very, very different.
Interesting. And this is perfect because I was going to ask, number one, how you guys met. I know it was at the New School and stuff like that, but how Moon Hooch started and what, if you can remember, like when you guys first started, what were you thinking about in terms of, this band's direction and stuff like that in terms of music? Number two, how you came up with the name Moon Hooch. Let's start off with that. So how did you guys actually meet in school, and what drove you towards each other? What kind of ideas were you first thinking of in terms of music, and then how'd you come up with the name Moon Hooch?
Yeah, so it's a funny story. Wenzel and I both auditioned for the John Coltrane ensemble because we're both very we're Coltrane worshipers, and and we both got in. However, Wenzel really didn't like the way I played because at the time I was like just going in like just more like Pharoah Sanders style, and like Late Train. I was listening to a lot of Late Train and like a lot of like big shapes and like noisy and experimental. And Wenzel was really like about cutting the changes, like and he just vibed me. And he will, I can say this because he did, and he knows it. And he vibed me out. I could tell in the audition, and then he found out that I got in and dropped the class. So That was the first time I met Wenzel.
Wow.
Then, of course, the universe puts us in the same house in Brooklyn. We were both friends with James at the time, separately. I never hung out before. And he moved in with James, who was my neighbor in Brooklyn. And one day, he heard me practicing, and he knocks on the door, and there's Wenzel. I'm like, this guy that vibed me out in the in the. And I'm like, "What's up, man?" He's like, "What are you working on?" And then we kind of became friends, like drinking buddies at first. And then we're like, "Man, we should make some money this summer. Let's become bartenders." So we went to bartending school together, and went to bartending school, got our bartending certificates to be bartenders. Because we're like, it's funny that we didn't first try music. We were like, that's not gonna make us money. Let's become bartenders. So so we go to bartending school. We go to all these bars, try and get a job. None of them accept us because you need experience, like a catch-22. You need experience to be a bartender. Even if you have a bartending license, you can't. So they expect you to be a what they call a busboy at first, and like all this stuff in New York. It's a very competitive scene, the bartending scene. So anyway, they didn't want us. So they were like, all right, let's try playing on the street. So we played jazz together on the street. Wouldn't make that much. I would go out on the street and just like basically attack the public with free jazz. Like me and my friend would just go out and like just on the streets of New York going hard. And much money doing that. In fact, got kicked out most of the time. And then one day I was walking along with Max, because he had the drums on the cart. We're looking for another location. We just got kicked out of a place, or some guy tried to fight us. I forget what happened, but we're walking along Washington Square Park, and we hear like some house music and a saxophone, like a house beat and a saxophone. I'm like, oh my God, it's Wenzel and James. So we go over there, and we're like, you guys want to play? 2 drum sets, 2 horns. And we set up under the Washington Square arch and played like a house thing. Wenzel gave me some chords. He's like, you play bass line, I play melody. And people immediately started dancing. It was like magic. Like thinking back on this day, it really was. It showed the magic of music. Like instantly people were like, woo, it's a party. 2 p.m. or something on like a Thursday or Tuesday. I don't know. But it was madness. Started making money and people were dancing. And it was like, hey, let's do this again. And the 2 drum thing wasn't very feasible. Sometimes we did it with Max, sometimes we did it with James. And I don't remember exactly why, how we ended up with James. Or I think he was just more like eager to do it. So anyway, that became the band, the 3 of us. And we started, that's how we started paying our rent. And our wish to make money that summer came true. And for the next 2 years, we were busking like 8 hours a day. We just became obsessed with it. We wanted to make more money. We wanted to, get more emails. We're like, let's do it. It's happening. Let's seize the opportunity. And so we were out there busting ass constantly. And that's how the band happened. And so eventually people started asking, what's the name of your band? And we're like, I don't know. We don't have a name. And then I was just like, Moon Juice, as a joke. And then we're like, hey, that's actually kind of good. We looked it up, and it was taken. So we went with thesaurus and found hooch as a synonym for juice, because juice can mean like liquor, and hooch is like homemade. It's like moonshine. So called it Moon Hooch, and it has 2 O's in each word. We're like, this is symmetrical. It sounds good. Let's go with it. And we've been Moon Hooch ever since.
That's an awesome story. And wow, just the fact, again, going back to that first quote, just you have to do it, right? And what you guys did, you found something that clicked, and then you went out, and then you bust like crazy, 8 to 10 hours a day. And was it I know that, you guys did the subways as well. In long time ago, I remember this, people would just go in the subways and play, but I know it's now by application and stuff like that. But were you playing in Washington Square first, playing on street corners, and then you went down to the subways, or how did that work?
Oh, we were playing everywhere. And it was by application then too, but we just did it anyway. I mean, a lot of the bars in New York, you know, that's how they make their money. So it's like if the cops come and tell you to leave, you'll just go somewhere else and do it. And that's exactly what we did. So we got every day we get kicked out by the cops, but we had the drive to just be like, well, let's go to a place where this cop isn't patrolling and play there, because they each have their precincts and they have a certain jurisdiction. So our favorite spots to hit were Bedford L and Union Square L. The L train in general is really good because there's a lot of young people. So yeah, we played everywhere, street corners, parks, subways. Subways were our favorite because people have to sit there and listen, whether they want to or not, And if you can convince them to smile or enjoy themselves a little bit, then you're going to make money.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great way to also test out your ideas for songs and stuff.
Absolutely. Oh yeah. We saw what worked. We saw what didn't very quickly.
Now, in terms of this, subways being the favorite and all that kind of thing, and constantly being on the move from the cops, you had to probably be pretty, I'll call it portable, and probably had to move quick, right? So, I mean, you guys have a huge sound, like two saxes essentially, right? Plus drums. So how do you guys make that work?
Well, back then it was really the power of dyads. Two notes on a horn on two horns can sound really powerful if you stack it right. A lot of our early songs, if you go back and analyze the harmony, it's a lot of fifths and a lot of tenths, and those are both really harmonically rich intervals, even though it's just two notes. So it kind of like creates like a mirage that there's more happening when. I mean, saxophone in general is a very harmonically rich instrument. So if, one person's playing the low note, the other person's playing the 10th or the 5th or, whatever, it sounds big. But we've evolved a lot since then. And now we're using a whole processing rig and, we're using Ableton Live. Wenzel and I are both electronic music producers now. We both produce our own music. Like when you Google my name, it says recording engineer. It doesn't even say saxophonist, which is hilarious. I don't know how that happened, but I am a recording engineer now. I guess it's just I never think of I wouldn't tell somebody that's what I am. But it's become a big part of what I do and what we do as a band as well.
How did that evolve from, okay, so I'm curious, how did that evolve from the dyads and the mirage of there's a lot more going on to the electronic music? How did that evolve? Was it just getting more more adept at, using something like Ableton Live, or what was it?
Absolutely. Wenzel was already using Ableton to produce tracks. He's the one that got me into that program. But from a young age, I was always into producing, on the early softwares, Cakewalk and these early recording softwares on Windows. I was always messing around with it. But for Moon Hooch, Wenzel got me into Ableton, and we started, at first we're like, well, maybe we should use pedals to trigger effects. It'd be cool if we had a delay on the horn. We could just turn it on. But we realized very quickly, it's so much work. Turn it on, turn it off, and okay, now on this part you need to turn the reverb on, and then use the pedal to turn it halfway so it's not super reverby. And it was just eventually we came to the method of using a click track, and we created this what we call a reverse DJ setup. So essentially, a DJ takes recorded sound, a record, and adds effects. Sometimes they'll add a filter or a delay, and they'll mix two things together. Basically, so it's recorded sound with added effects, with live effects. What Moon Hooch does is we produce the set from A to Z, and each track, each microphone on stage is running into our processor, and each track is really intricately automated with 12 different effect buses and a lot of effect racks. And it's just, so basically the pedals are turning on and off pre-recorded while the music is live.
Wow, that's intricate.
Yeah. So it's been a long evolution, and it's still evolving. It's like the set is like a living thing, or the Moon Hooch set. It's like it's always changing, but there are these like remnants, these transients of earlier years. Yeah, it's cool.
So let me. This is incredible. I've never heard of this before for myself, and this is my naivete. But so you're producing each set, already before you go into a main show and stuff like that. So then you can't take requests then, because everything's set.
No requests. And we don't stop either. We actually recently started doing a set break, which because our show is intense. Like before, we were just blasting people for an hour and a half, nonstop, not saying anything. That's how we did it for 10 years.
Wow.
And because that's how a DJ does it. A DJ is just, they get up there and they play the music. But we started to notice like halfway through the set, people start to lose focus a little bit. It's a long time, and especially this day and age. So a set break kind of like resets everybody's focus. They go get another drink. But still, it's 45 minutes and 45 minutes on both sides. So yeah, that's how we started doing it, and it's worked really well. We don't take requests, but there is room to improvise. There's a lot of room to improvise in there, because we have entire sections where like the click track will shut off in our ears and it'll be kind of open. The time that is over is predetermined, but we have things like, a ding set up to be like, all right, finish it up, basically.
Okay.
The time is coming to go into the next section. And yeah, so it's become really thoroughly composed. And I just noticed that the shows hit so much harder when it's like that, because you're really rehearsed. And this kind of, I'm going on a rant here, but this
it's great.
This kind of brings me into this other realization over the years of when you do something over and over again, whether it be an exercise or practice or scale, whatever it is, a show. In this case, a show. When you do it over and over again, the field of energy, this is getting kind of woo, but the field of energy that it creates becomes more powerful, because it's so many times that when that drop hits, you've done it so many times that it's gonna do it. You don't have to do anything. And there are some times I'll get up on stage and I'll be like, man, in my head, I'll be like, I'm playing like crap. It's a horrible show. And, the negative, the nagging ego gets involved. And then afterwards, people are like, that was the best show I've ever seen. Or like, oh my God, thank you so much. Like, that was incredible. And then I listen back to it and I'm like, this was great. Like, so what I'm saying is, once you do something so much, it doesn't need you anymore. Like you can get out of the way and just let it happen, because it's there now. It just exists in the universe, and all you need to do is show up, essentially. Like, we played shows with fevers, like pre-COVID times. We played shows with fevers, like messed up. One of us has to run it into the other room because we're sick. It's like, wow. And it turned out to be a great show because we've done it so much. And with improvising an entire set, which is what we used to do, and play songs here and there, it's harder to get that, like, gonna hit every time, because there's so much more up to chance, so much more chaos involved. And the nature of improvisation is that you haven't done it before. Right. So that's just a whole other thing. So yeah, so we do that all the time now. And we rehearse before every tour and make sure it's ready to go, and make sure that field of energy is there. That's
so I'm so glad that you shared that. And that's so interesting, because I was just thinking to myself, if you are, where can you leave the room to improvise? And then I'm thinking, oh my gosh, how do you know when to come back in? That's really brilliant.
Thank you. I love the idea of having enough structure to support spontaneity. If it's just totally free, it's hard for the audience, it's hard for you to grab onto anything, But if there's structure, there's enough structure, not like 100% structure, because then it's too rigid and it's not fun. But you want enough structure to support spontaneity, and that's kind of how we think about it.
Okay, now let me ask you to expand upon that. When you say enough structure, for my first thought was like, when it came to free jazz at first, it's exploring that, the masters that have explored that and stuff like that. It really comes down to you can't really totally have free jazz. There has to be some kind of structure that eventually comes in because I think it's just human nature. But when you talk about enough structure, what does that mean for you, especially as you guys are performing?
Well, the set is the structure. We've predetermined the form essentially, and there are things that there are places in that form where we can be totally playful and free and do what we want. But then once that time, that free time is over, essentially we play our parts, and I think it's that push and pull between structure and spontaneity that makes things interesting to people, and to us as performers. It keeps it interesting because, if you listen to free jazz, which obviously you have, sometimes it can be too much. Like for me at least, some people just love how free it is and how open it is. But I think the reason it never popularized in a real big way was because there's the whole purpose of free jazz is no structure, like otherwise it's obviously we're generalizing and putting labels on things. Free jazz, what is that? But right. Like if you're just going totally bananas on the sax, and it's going to be harder for people to grasp onto that and be like, oh, I like this means something to me, this moves me in some way, whereas if there's a melody and then you go bananas and then you play the melody again, that's a structure now. The structure supported the spontaneity, you know what I mean? Even just something as simple as that. But then I guess now I'm like, but then you could say that the structure in free jazz is the beginning and the end, and now we're getting like metaphysical, but you know what I'm saying, right?
No, I do, because, this reminds me, there was a few times back I'm originally from New York. So back in New York, I had played with, someone who was into this free jazz idea, and, you just show up at the gig and he just starts playing. There's no key.
Yeah.
No key, just start playing. And, my thing is, I always want to play the right notes at the right time. That's just the way I think. And I'm trying to find melodies out of this and whatever. And, there was no set beginning, no set end. We just played. And, like, I just remember doing this, and there were times when I felt successful. There's the ego coming in. I felt successful, whatever. Other times I felt like I was in the zone. So that feels really good. But sometimes you sit there, you're like, okay, how are you ending it? What's going on? And it felt tenuous. And I'm sure, I don't know if the audience felt that or whatever, but I think personally, I know for me, I think I need some kind of structure. I don't want something rigid though. I realize that. What you just said, like structure with the room for spontaneity. I love that. But I do think that people want that structure. And I also think, again, getting back to, I'm pulling out my phone, people, the attention spans are so short now that I think if something gets dragged on too long that doesn't have some kind of structure that people can grab onto, you lose them. I don't know. It's just my own thought, from when I've seen performing and all that kind of thing. But I think this some kind of structure is needed.
Yeah, absolutely. And, obviously there's no right or wrong. It's not a,
yeah.
I know personally some musicians in New York that are like so anti-structured. The audience is obsolete. They're like, I want you to hate it actually. You know what I mean? Like, actually, I hope you hate this. Like, I know people like that too, who are like the antithesis of the playing for the audience. So there's that's what's cool about music though. There's such a wide spectrum of like performers and music and ways to look at it, think about it. But I'm with you. To me, great music, what I consider great music is music that has enough structure to support spontaneity. And that can exist in free jazz too. I recently saw a concert with three great tenor players, legends, Jerry Bergonzi, George Garzone, and Dave Liebman. And my friend was playing bass with them. And it was such a good concert. You know, it was a room. It was cool to see. It was a room. It was up in the Lily Pad in Boston, Mass. And basically the room was packed with young people, old people, everybody, every type of person, packed to the brim because these guys are legends, and everybody wanted this a rare opportunity. And it was free jazz, but the way that they played was structured. It was like they weren't stepping on each other's toes. You know, they weren't playing tunes. But like Garzone would come in and like they'd be playing and you know, then he'd start playing something really melodic. And then it would be the bass solo, and I was a bass solo. And it's like, I think like having different things happening, even that structure, you know, it's when it's like everybody's playing all at once. It's a cacophony and nobody's listening to each other. It's just, it's like, you make it stop. And some people love that, you know. Some people just like to see people squirm. That's the truth of it, and that's okay.
That reminds me in the subways where I'd be sitting in the subway and some people who were not musicians would come in and sing badly and just give me money and I'll get out.
Yeah. Oh, totally. There's this dude in New York. I God bless his soul. I hope he's still alive. He was a homeless guy, and he called himself Antenna Man. I actually with him is I won't get into it, but basically he was this wild man that lived down the subways. I think he wore antennas on his head and played alto sax. He'd get on the train and just be like screeching, like super screechy, insane, like cosmic vibes. And he'd be like, you know, if you give me money, I'll stop. And and that was his thing, you know, and he loved it. Like it's just everybody's different, you know.
And I'm sure he made a lot of money doing that. But yeah, this is awesome. So now let me change gears because I do want to talk about you know, what the work that you do, and you have such an incredible huge sound, I feel. And so, you know, can you talk about like your tonal concept? And then also, you know, people are going to be curious about your equipment as well. And, you know, maybe break it down by instrument. And those of you that are just listening, I'm going to encourage you to just check out this video because this is a great background. You see all the saxes back there. It looks really, really cool. But yeah, talk about your tonal concept. I know, you know, yes, Coltrane was definitely an influence. You had, you know, your other teachers that were influences as well. But like what, you know, if you can expand upon your tonal concept.
Sure. Well, it all started with long tones. I think it's funny, like for me, growing up, having like a story was always helpful. Like somebody told me Sonny Rollins would practice on the Williamsburg Bridge, and he would practice long tones for hours, just holding one note. And then the next day he'd go and play a different note. And like that story stuck with me. I don't know if it's true, but so I started practicing long tones because they were like, that's how he got such a big sound. So I started doing just that, start with the lowest note, and I would just play it as soft as I could, as loud as I could, as long as I could, and just like play that one note over and over and over and over and over again. And then I did that with the whole chromatic scale. And that's kind of where I started with sound development, like really thinking about getting a bigger sound and like and increasing my capacity in both dynamics and longevity. And then I got into overtones. I got this very famous book. Many saxophonists have used it, Top Tones for the Saxophone, by Sigurd Rascher. And the overtone exercises in that book really, really helped me expand. Somebody let me borrow it when I was going to the new school. and I just got hooked with like. It's cool when you have a book that like, you know, you have exercises that you can try and master. You know, it's like here's a very specific thing. Here's like long tones can be very like sometimes you need some structure to support the spontaneity, and like long tones can be kind of structureless. You know, like I'm gonna play this note indefinitely. Okay, at least that's how I approached it. So the overtone exercises were really good because it was like, okay, I'm gonna try and do this first page and like get this down, you know. And I started experimenting with overtones, and when you do that, if you're open-minded to it, you find all these like multiphonics that will happen by accident, and like all these crazy sounds start to happen, and you can play with those, and that's the spontaneity part, is like play around with the mistakes, you know, play around with the weird sounds and like make them yours. So I developed a lot of my extended techniques through that, just through going through the Sigurd Rascher book and his exercises. And then when things kind of got weird, like going with it a little bit, being like, oh, can I recreate that sound? You know, how did I do that? Yeah, it was a mistake, but why did it happen? How did it happen? Go experimenting with things in that way. And then I would say the next pivotal moment, that at least off the top of my head, is when I was studying with Tony Malaby, another great saxophonist. He taught me this kind of breaking the horn in two technique, where basically you take two halves of the horn and symmetrically divide them through symmetrical intervals, which would take another half hour to explain. But essentially, like thinking of the horn like it's a piano, like when essentially your breath is your finger hitting the piano and the note sounds, right? The hammer hits there's no like hiccup before the note happens. It's like you hit the key, the note sounds. And so putting the air into the horn and the note sounds, and working on that as a concept and technique, right? You know, because a lot of the time you play the low B flat and it's like, you know, it doesn't happen right away. So really like just sitting with the low B flat again, and trying to get it to sound, you know, and to this day, that's been a practice of mine, dividing the horn in two and trying to get an evenness of response and volume. And yeah, those have been my pivotal tonal practices to this day. I still practice all of those things. And the other one I should mention is playing with a drone. I studied Indian music for a year, and went to India. I studied with this Indian tabla player, and he taught me the Carnatic system, the different syllables, and taught me about the tempura drone, which, if you've ever heard Indian music, is the drone in the background. You know, that's just kind of a constant dun 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 dun. You've heard it before. It's hard to recreate with the voice, but so I would practice all my scales with that drone. I would do long tones with it, and that was really helpful because it became a meditation. Now it wasn't just like a mechanical thing, but like I'm closing my eyes, there's this drone happening. I hear my sound versus the sound of the drone. You can really hear the rub of the notes in the intonation. And it gets deep, you know, you can get deeper and deeper into your intonation and your sound. So those are the things that were really pivotal in helping me develop my sound.
What would be your ideal amount of practicing time, and you know, the ideal exercises that you would be able to practice every day? And I'm using the word ideal because people tend to think, oh, you know, performers, they get to practice all day, but you don't, because there's lots of other things.
Yeah, definitely not. You know, the Moon Hooch show, I feel blessed with Moon Hooch because a lot of saxophonists are in bands where they're not playing most of the time, unless it's like a big band, or even then, like, you lay out a lot. Moon Hooch, it's 2 horn players, so we're both playing the whole time, hour and a half every day. So just that in itself is great practice. But for me, like an ideal practice, say I'm going for like an hour, I'll do 20 minutes. I think of it like, karate has kata. This is like my kata. I have my essentials that I do every day, and that's an hour baseline. And it's 20 minutes of symmetrical intervallic patterns. So essentially patterns that I've been working on a long time, that I just try to play them perfectly and get them as fast as I can without stumbling, just to wake up my hands, and then I'll do 20 minutes of tunes. Usually I'll pick a few tunes that I want to play, because for me, playing changes in jazz and tunes is such a good workout in every way. Like, you really hit all the muscles. You have to think about the changes, so you're using your intellect. You're engaging that part of your brain, because you don't want that to get mushy. You're like, which if I wasn't doing that, it could, because in Moon Hooch, it's like, I'm not, our tunes are harmonically complex, but it's not like giant steps complex, so doing that kind of thing for me is like great practice, just like being able to come up with interesting lines and keep those faculties sharp. And then at the end, I'll do 20 minutes of drone work. I'll play with a drone, or and just improvise freely, usually at this point. At the moment, I'm actually not doing really strictly any of those tonal exercises I just mentioned. I've done them so much in my life that right now, like, what I do with the drone is more kind of like a spiritual practice, because I really like to keep the mechanical stuff in shape, because that's what people see. They come and they see the mechanical and they feel the spiritual, so it's like you want to have your faculties on point. You don't want to be slacking. But then also, if you're not connected, if you're not grounded in your presence, and that's not in your sound, then that's a big thing that's missing. So I like to do that every day too. Just connect with the horn and get into kind of what I call a spiritual place with it. So that's my ideal hour. Do I always get to do that? No, especially on the road. So sometimes it's only the first 20 minutes. That's my kata, I call it, because it's like that gets you warmed up. Doing those exercises all the way up and down the horn through altissimo, and like that gets you ready for the show. And if you can do more, awesome. But can't always do more.
And so when you have a show, like maybe earlier in the day you practice, do you also, that's also how you warm up to get ready for the show as well?
Yeah. Well, so the touring lifestyle is not as luxurious as everybody might think, or I don't know what everybody thinks, but it's not that luxurious. Basically, we don't have a tour bus, and that's intentional, because we just don't feel comfortable sleeping on the bus while he's driving through the night. But we do the hotel room thing, so we have early lobby calls. So these days, honestly, my priority is my fitness and health. So I wake up in the morning and I work out for an hour every day. And then we get on the van, we drive to the gig, you unload, you do the sound check. And then after sound check, we usually meet with fans. We have a VIP ticket kind of thing where fans can come hang out with us and we talk. And then that's your time. Then you have about 2 hours maybe to do whatever else you want to do before the show. And sometimes it's more if it was a short drive. It depends on the day. But at that point, that's when I would practice. That's when I would eat. So I eat, and then either I work out again, or if I feel satisfied, I'll practice more. But I try to get at least 20 minutes before every show. For me, like the amount that I practice kind of goes in waves. But again, for me, the most important thing is that I'm connecting with my instrument every day. And that I also have periods of intentionally building up like new skills. So yeah, that's how I approach it.
That's awesome. Now, let's also dive a little bit more into sound too. Your equipment. Can you talk about what you use for each of your horns?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is my tenor, and this is a Conn 10M from 1941.
Wow.
See it there? It's very green, the green monster it's been called. I love this horn. This horn was given to me, a crazy story. This horn was given to me on a rooftop party in New York City by a philanthropist. I didn't know he was a philanthropist. But we're playing on this guy's roof, and he's like, hey, you want to see Sonny Stitt's old horn? And I'm like, yeah. And we go down, I was like 20 years old at the time, or 21. We go down there, and he takes it out, and he hands it to me. He's like, if you love it, it's yours. And I was like, I love it. He's like, well, play it first. And I played it, and it's just butter. I was playing on a Selmer Reference 54 at the time, which is a great horn, and I loved it. But there's something about this horn that was just like, boom. The sound, the old Conns, they just vibrate in a very special way, and they right away connected with it very deeply. And I've been playing it ever since. So yeah, that's my tenor. Then my bass sax back here is can you see it?
Yeah.
The bush. I'll bring it forward. This is a Sakusu bass sax. It's one of the cheapest bass saxes actually that you can get. I got it at sax.co.uk, and it's awesome. I was playing on an old vintage Conn, but ergonomically it was a trash can. It would have made a better lamp. It sounded really cool, but it just didn't. I shouldn't say that. I sold it to somebody. I hope they're loving it. I hope they don't think that. No, but no, it was a good horn. It just wasn't what I needed. I like to move around on the horn. So it just didn't have the stuff I needed. And then the alto that I'm currently playing on is actually, I can't really talk about it because it hasn't been released yet, and it's a special thing that's coming out. So stay tuned with that. And yeah, I have way too many altos. I have like 5 altos right now. Like this Chinese, he sent me an alto. I have that one. I bought this Conn. It's like a Conn stencil. It's a Continental. It's called. It has like a little pilgrim on it. It's funny, but that's a great horn actually. I love that horn. And I have some other Chinese alto. And I have a bunch of Chinese altos for some reason.
Okay, cool. So we know about the horns, mouthpieces. It looks like you're using Sios.
Yeah, I'm using Sios on all my horns.
Which reeds do you use?
I use Boston Sax Shop reeds.
You do? Okay. And all right, now in terms of sound, and I had mentioned this to you before we met. I saw one video on your YouTube channel. You were I forgot the song you were playing, but you were circular breathing. So can you talk about how when you started to do that, and if you remember, because I'm always curious about this, if you remember when you first started doing that, like how long did it take you to be able to circular breathe?
So it's funny. I get asked this quite a bit, and people ask me to teach them. I'm terrible at teaching circular breathing, and I don't mean this to sound cocky, but I just got it right away. Like it was one of those things where my friend showed me how to do it, and I was like this, and I just could do it. It was weird. It's like it. I like to compare it to like patting your head and rubbing your stomach. It's one of those things. Like some people can just do it right away, some can't. Everybody can learn how. So I was kind of lucky, I guess, in that it came to me right away. I wasn't like amazing at it right away, but I could do it right away. And that's the hardest part, is figuring out how to, breathe in through the nose and push the air out through the cheeks. I think it actually helps to have smoked cigars. And I know that sounds weird, but if you ever smoked a cigar, you know that you don't breathe in the smoke. You don't do that unless you're, trying to kill your lungs, because it's so much smoke. You bring it into your mouth. You use the suction of your mouth to bring it in. So I had smoked cigars by the time that this guy showed me how to do it. So, and I think he explained it that way, and it just made sense to me. So, yeah, I've been doing it since, I don't know, 2012, I think.
Do you find the circular breathing did okay, so it obviously your asthma didn't affect the way you were able to do that. Has it helped the asthma?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, anything related to like focusing on your breath more, being more aware of your breath, using your breath in different ways is going to help the asthma. It helps everything. So it definitely helped with my breath awareness. And at first it was tough, and for some reason at first I could only do it when I was trilling a note. I don't know if it's because there's less pressure when you're trilling between two notes. I don't really know. But like, that's how I started. I couldn't really hold one note for a very long time. And then eventually it just got better and better.
Do you use circular breathing when you're doing, and I'm going to use this word meditative, but when you're doing the meditative drone work, do you use circular breathing as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. I actually really got into it for that reason, because first of all, the act of circular breathing has to be meditative, because you can't miss a beat. Like, you have to breathe in, you have to focus on exactly how much air you have in your cheeks to keep the tone going, and you have to immediately switch over to blowing with your lungs. And once that runs out, then you start the process over again. So it's a very meditative thing. And what I was actually really into Philip Glass and Steve Reich when I got into circular breathing, which was like perfect timing, because their music is minimalist in that it's like one arpeggio for 5 minutes, or like one thing over and over again. And I just started doing that on the sax. I started playing arpeggios and coming up with cool harmonic lines that were fun to circular breathe. And I think what really, though, accelerated my ability to do it was busking. So I was a really avid busker. Like, when I wasn't playing with Moon Hooch, I was down there by myself. I would practice down there. Because the way I saw it, like, why not get paid to practice? Like, 50% of the people are going to hate what you're doing anyway, even if you're performing. So I was just like, I would just go down there and practice in front of everybody. And I would practice the circular breathing stuff. I'd come up with a pattern and just do it for as long as I could. I'd be like, okay, I'm just going to push this, see how long I can do it, and close my eyes. And, then I would open my eyes and there's some $1 bills in there. Great. So yeah, it's very meditative, like, cool. It gets you into a trance-like state for sure.
Awesome. All right, we're going to totally switch gears now. Your collaborations, particularly lately, Thundersmack. That is so cool. Your collaboration with Leo P. Talk about that. Talk about how it started. And you guys have been putting out some videos, especially lately. I saw the Jingle Bells one. I saw a couple of others. Just so good. You guys sound so good together.
Oh, thank you. The foundation of that band is having fun. Like, when Leo and I get together, the main goal is have a good time, and again, it's like him and I are very weirdly similar. Like, we've had similar upbringing, similar paths, as saxophonists, as guys. And when we first met, it was kind of weird, because it wasn't like, I think he thought I was judging. Like, basically, Moon Hooch started a few years before Too Many Zoos, and he knew me as like the guy from Moon Hooch. And the first time we met, I forget what happened, but I think I was drunk and whatever. It was weird. But the first time we really connected, Moon Hooch and Too Many Zoos played a show together in Paris. And afterwards, we went out and partied together, and we just clicked. It was like we saw each other, and we're like, ah, like, you know, kind of like it's you moment, you know, like my old friend. And from that moment on, we were just like best buds, and we'd get together and jam and hang out and party, and it was just always a good time. And then I moved out of New York City, and he would come visit me up where I live now in New Bedford, Mass. And that's how Thundersmack started. You know, it started with us just hanging out, and at first it wasn't very structured. It was just kind of like, let's just hang out and see what happens. Then we wrote a few tunes, played we played at this our first gig and only gig actually was at this house party in Providence. You know, it's not it doesn't have that like long like hard working story of Moon Hooch. Obviously that's included his hard long working thing with Tumi Zoos and mine with Moon Hooch, but him and me together was just us getting together to have fun. And we played at this party in Providence, and we're like, man, we should make this into a band, a project for real. So we recorded our first album, which is the self-titled Thundersmack album, and then since then we've made a few EPs, and every time we get together now, we make sure like to at least finish 3 tracks. That's the goal usually. So we get together for a few days, finish a few tracks, and make sure to have fun. That's the key.
Cool. And with all these things that you're putting on Instagram and probably TikTok, you know, you're putting all that stuff out too. That's extra stuff though, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a lot of fun. I'd encourage people to definitely check those out because it's really cool. And what's the other thing that you guys have in common too, you're in great shape, and you have to be for the types of shows that you all put on, you know, and the movement, the excessive movement, and also playing a bass sax, you know, takes a tremendous amount of air as well. I think it's so inspiring for people that do have asthma that think that, oh, I'll never be good because I'll never have enough air. But look, here you go.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, even when I was a teenager, I couldn't have imagined playing a bass sax, you know, the way I do now. And yeah, it really does speak to anything is possible if you just keep doing it, keep taking the steps to improve your health and improve your playing every day. It's not going to happen immediately. It might not even happen in a few years, but if you really stick to it, it will happen. That's just how it goes. So
yeah, absolutely. And you know what I wanted to also ask too, because one of the things that you guys are kind of known for too is doing some, for Moon Hooch at least, some very unique things in terms of like traffic cones and stuff like that. So how did those types of unique things that you guys do, how did that come to pass?
Well, the traffic cone in particular, basically we couldn't afford a bass sax at the time, and we didn't have any low instrument. It was just 2 tenor saxes. That's how the band started, which is crazy that we started like a career off of a band with 2 tenor saxes and drums. Like that in itself shows if you just keep showing up on the subway platform, it'll happen, you know? But anyway, one day Wenzel was walking to our rehearsal and saw a long cardboard tube and thought to put in a saxophone. So he did, and lo and behold, it made a lower note. So, because the longer the tube or cylinder, the lower the note will be if vibrating air is passed through it. And he started using that in the band. And then we were on the road in Iowa, and the tube got lost somehow, and because things get left behind. It looked like a cardboard packing tube, like for posters or whatever. But it was an integral part of the show at this point. So he saw a traffic cone out back and said, well, let me try this, and stuck that in his horn, and it worked. He went to a plumbing store and got like a I don't know what you call it, like the pipe connector, basically the rubber thing that you put around it. Put that at the bottom of the tube and stuck it in the horn and made a secure fit. And he's been using it ever since. I've been doing it too ever since. So that's how it started.
That's cool. Do you know of Sam Newsom?
No.
Oh, all right. You've got to check him out. I interviewed him for the podcast. What a nice guy, great player, and he also experiments with certain, like pipes and devices, and he mostly plays soprano sax. You've got to check him out
Damn.
because yeah, I'll actually send it to you. I'll email you his name and stuff, and I'll look for that episode as well because he's that's very interesting. That's very
Yeah.
interesting. Cool. That's awesome. Well, listen, first of all, thank you. You've been so generous with your time and everything. Before we go, first of all, how can people reach out to you?
You can either direct message me on Instagram at Michael Wilbur Sax, or write me an email at michaelwilburmusic@gmail.com.
Cool. And also, we're going to put your links and all that kind of thing in the show notes. We'll put links for you and also the links for the Moon Hooch website and anything and all those types of things. What is coming up for you in 2023?
2023 is going to be a big year. We were actually just on a major television broadcast. Again, I can't say what because it hasn't been released yet, but it's going to be on NBC and it's going to be big. So Moon Hooch is going to be on a big show coming up in the next few months. And
Awesome.
yeah, and we're touring a lot in the States. We're going on tour with this band, the Motet. We're going on tour with this guy, Balkan Bump. He's opening up for us. We're going down to Florida and Texas. We're all over the place this upcoming year. We're going to Europe twice. Yeah, it's going to be massive. So we're going to be very, very busy. You can check out our tour dates at moonhooch.com/tour. And, also on all of our socials, we're always updating that. So
I have a question too. Like we talked about, your show, your setup, and that kind of thing. Is your setup very extensive to the point where I'm just thinking you're going to be traveling to Europe? That may be kind of tricky to do, or am I wrong?
no, it's tricky. It's less tricky and more expensive.
Okay.
Especially with the bass sax. We got to figure something out basically with the bass sax because the case I have by itself is, I think, 90 pounds.
Oh my God.
So,
Wow.
and you don't want to travel with like a flimsy case with this giant thing. So it's a hassle. It's very expensive. Some of the airlines don't accept objects that big. So I got to figure something out. That's the hardest part of touring in Europe. Other than that, it's it's not that bad. Like most things can fit into a suitcase and a small like Pelican case. So we keep it pretty tight.
Yeah, I think you'd have to, especially, doing all the touring, you have to find ways to be as efficient and but also as safe and protective as possible. I'm thinking
Yeah,
for like you bring your tenor and stuff like that, you probably put that on the plane. I'm
yeah,
thinking.
100%.
Yeah, for sure. Well, listen, Michael, thank you so much for your time. This was incredible. You shared so much great stuff.
Thank you, Donna. You're great at interviewing, and thanks for having me on this awesome podcast.